Hello and welcome back to another crafty card video. My name is Marianne and today I'm going to be creating 3 cards using smaller rectangular die cuts to create different patterns. These dies all come from Concord & 9 Summer Camp. The one in the middle comes from last year, and the 2 on the ends are from this year. And I saw a really cool card at the summer camp featuring this floral die on the end that showed a repetitive pattern using the same die over and over again. And that's not something I had ever really done before, so I really wanted to challenge myself and create something like it. And I also had these other 2 rectangular dies that are the exact same size, and so I tried to play with different patterns and different colors to create these 3 different cards. Since all of these dies are the exact same size, I used them all to sort of get kind of familiar with the layouts that I wanted by overlaying them over a white card panel, but only one die will be used to create the pattern on each card. I should also mention that the card that I was inspired by was created by Betsy Green. My first card is going to use this bird postage card, and I have die cut already the entire die out of Oceanside cardstock and gold cardstock. I had originally thought I was going to use gold for the outer edge of the postage, but I ended up changing my mind about that. And then because I hate to waste cardstock, I end up just cutting the individual smaller pieces out of the colors that I want. So I'm cutting out the leaves out of artichoke and avocado. And then I'm going to be cutting out the little branch out of woodland cardstock. It's a brown from Hero Arts. And there are a few teeny tiny pieces to keep track of on this one as well, like between the little feet. I'll also cut the little eye out of woodland too. And then for my little bird, I'm going to cut that out to 4 shades of orange, cayenne, spice cider, clementine, and creamsicle. And I'm keeping all of my pieces in the little tray, trying to keep them outlined so I can keep track of them all since some of them are a little small. For my first card here, I'm going to create a focal point with the die cuts that I just cut out of all the different colors in the center, and then I'm going to form a pattern around it, filling in all of the empty white space. So here I'm determining exactly how many pieces I'll need to cut out. So the top piece can also serve the top of the bottom piece, and then the left piece can serve the right side as well, since part of it will be cut off, and then I'll need another piece to do all 4 corners. So I'm deciding that I need to cut out 3 additional postage dies here to fill out the rest of my pattern. And since I want that die cut one to be the focal point with all the different colors, I decided to cut my remaining 3 that I need out of white cardstock, and then I'm going to ink blend them in the same colors to make them match but have them be slightly different, so it's a little bit so they kind of like maybe blend into the background a little bit more. I'm using my sticky mat to get all of the pieces lined up and oriented in the right place so that when I ink blend it kind of looks like a continuous blend on the piece and doesn't have mismatch some darker points in odd places, although most of this is going to get trimmed off the edges anyway, but I was trying to make sure that these pieces were aligned as much as possible before ink blending. And for the ink blending that I'm doing, I'm trying to make the colors as light of hand as possible to really make them subtler than the cardstock background. Although honestly, I don't think the oranges, even though they're 4 different shades of orange, I don't know that they're that distinguishable. But it's really just a very light hand on these pieces. It was also around this time too that I decided to change the border of the stamp from gold to pebble cardstock and therefore pebble ink on these frames. It was also here that I decided that I wanted to actually pop up these pieces on some foam tape, and so in order to do that, because they're just die cut pieces, they don't have a back or anything, I'm going to cut out a little tiny square that's just smaller than the outer edge of the postage so that the frame will fit, but just where those indentations are, you won't see the white cardstock behind it, so that I can glue the pieces on and then I can add the foam tape to the back of that smaller rectangle. I'm adhering the pieces to the white panel using double-sided adhesive, and I'm starting with the inner shapes and then I'll add the frame at the end. I just found that that was the easier process. I'll repeat that for all of my remaining die cuts, and then I didn't film this part, but I adhered them to the front of my card with some foam tape and then created a sort of grid-like pattern and then added this hello die in gold and trimmed off all of the excess rectangular squares. So I have this focal point in the front and then the subtle repetition of the pattern on the sides in ink. Moving on to my second card, I'm going to be using this color palette that features Merlot, Sicily, and Coral from Spellbinders, and then Lemongrass, Oceanside, and Peacock from Concord and Ninth. I don't quite have enough Coral from cardstock left, so I'm going to have to get a little bit creative with the placement so I can get as much of it as possible on the card. I'm going to end up die cutting this 6 times out of each of these colors. And then I'm going to inlay, kind of mixing the colors a little bit, which is also something that I don't typically do. So here I'm trying some new color combinations. Normally I would want to do flowers that are flower colors, leaves that are green, blues for the sky, but here I'm really trying to test some new things out. And that was one of the things I actually really liked about Betsy's card, was how she used color to create sort of a different pattern. I'm going to use the background pieces of the die, and I'm also going to be using a side fold card here where the side fold is on the short end. I thought that was a little bit unique, but I'm getting a feel for my layout so that I can make sure to place that coral piece in a spot where it won't be obvious that it's not a complete rectangle. I'm then going to use my sticky mat to lay out my patterns and to inlay my colors where I want them to go. And I did play around with this a little bit. Like I said, this doesn't come naturally to me, so I really tried different color variations, and I ended up wanting to go with a pattern that had at least all of the colors in each of the rectangles, but not too much of any one color, so that there was good kind of variation and balance. And again, keeping in mind that sort of cut off coral, the coral piece that was incomplete. So there's only so many places those colors can actually go. Once I'm satisfied with my layout, I'm then going to bring back in my card base to again get a sense of placement. There was another cool feature of the card where there was sort of a cut off edge where part of the pattern was actually on the inside of the card, but you could still see it from the front. And so the placement here is actually like really important, getting that just so that I can cut that in the right place. I'm going to be making marks with my pencil here to get the end points of where I want to make the cut on the front part of the card. And then I'm going to line up those 2 pencil marks in my paper trimmer and then cut straight through to create that diagonal line. Much like the last card, I'm going to be using double-sided adhesive behind each of these rectangles, but instead of having it on cardstock, I want it to be as flat as possible, so there's going to be no foam tape or anything, no extra cardstock. So I'm actually just going to be using the double-sided adhesive to create these pieces that I'll then glue down. It can be a little tricky to get these larger pieces like in the right format, so I've tried not to like push them all down in all at once. And these corners of these rectangles are also rounded, so I'll trim off those little corners so that it matches the die cut. And then I'll start inlaying all my pieces one at a time. I found it best to work from sort of top left to bottom right, more or less. Trying to keep those bottom flaps of that background a little bit loose so that I can maneuver them around those really thin stems and such, and make sure the leaf placement is good without any overlapping pieces. And then I just kind of repeat that for all 6 panels. You'd think by the end of this I would have become quite the expert paper piecer on double-sided adhesive, but it is a little tricky to work with double-sided adhesive. So I did get a lot of practice, but I wouldn't say I am now an expert. I'm going to finalize the layout of my pattern, and I want to disguise that cut edge a little bit. So those two middle pieces are going to be adhered directly up to the edge. And I want to get a kind of nice even placement with the rest of the pieces. So when I'm ready to glue them down, I'm going to peel back the other side of the double-sided adhesive, and I'm going to stick my little sticker down. It is a little difficult because it's so thin and the pieces are only held together by the double-sided adhesive. So I would recommend being a little bit careful here in placing them down. And also, once you place them down, they are there, because even though you do have some maneuverability with the adhesive, because it's so thin and you don't have another cardstock backing, it does mean that you're kind of, once it's down, it's down. I'm gonna adhere and then trim each of my remaining pieces as well until I have completed my entire pattern. I'm then gonna make sure that all of the adhesive is nice and secure by pressing down on the top of all of these die cut pieces. I absolutely love the finished card. I added a little die cut sentiment in gold cardstock offset with black cardstock to really make it pop. I love this color palette, and I love how you can see the pattern even on the inside of the card with that diagonal cut. I think this actually might be one of my favorite cards of all time. And for the final card, I'm really stepping outside of my comfort zone by creating kind of a pop art with this cereal box die, which says "You are seriously the best." So I'm going to die cut out of 3 shades of yellow, 3 shades of red, and 3 shades of blue. And then I'm going to piece them together much like I did the last 2 cards. Similar to my first card, I'm going to adhere the double-sided adhesive to a piece of white cardstock that I'm then going to paper piece on top of. There are a lot of like little tiny letters, so I thought it would be better to have that additional support with the background for when I glue it onto my final card. This is also a bit of a delicate process. I think the best way to do this is to not press down too hard until you're satisfied with the position, and then sort of reinforce that adhesive. Additionally, this one was a little bit trickier because of the little tiny letters. While they fit in those spaces perfectly, there were a few of the letters like the A and the O, which had sort of the internal parts that I also wanted to have there. So it was really hard to keep track of all these tiny little pieces for each of them and then try to place them in. It was a pretty laborious process. I'll repeat that for my remaining 4 cereal boxes, and I also trimmed off the little excess corners of the double-sided adhesive. I'm going to use liquid adhesive to adhere my 4 cereal boxes to my card panel. And then the die also comes with these little Cheerios and sort of the top part of the spoon, which I'm also going to glue down on the focal cereal box, which is going to be the one in that bottom left corner. The excess cereal boxes on the outside of the card were also trimmed as well. And since I had so many pieces left, since I cut this out 9 times essentially, I also added another little seriously on the inside of the card, so to be like "You were seriously the best," like seriouslys on the inside with some of those little extra Cheerios. And I think this is a really cute card, and it's totally different from many of the cards that I have made in the past. And so here are the final 3 cards showing different kind of repetitions, different kind of color palettes, really trying to stretch the things that I normally do. Let me know in the comments which one is your favorite card. Thanks so much for watching. You are seriously the best.